So what happens when two third-generation Arizona women authors who are passionate about their state start talking about experiences, insights, and memories of different places? They don't stop talking. They write a book, and then they start a podcast. Welcome to Celebrating Arizona with Julie Morrison and Lisa Schnebly Heidinger. Grab your favorite drink and settle in. We're celebrating Arizona, going everywhere from A to Z. And we're off.
And we're in.
And we're
Hello.
back. Yes, ushered in. Love the car starting.
Always. Yeah.
How are you?
And it might, as I think about it, the way we run around so much in our lives, that may be the one time that the sound of the car starting is sort of exciting, you know.
although I don't know. The way we run around is also pretty great. But I take your point. I have said that a potential epitaph for me could be she carried a great many things from place to place. And
Oh, jeez. I haven't heard this one before, but I'm gonna vote for whatever's the alternate.
Okay. But we do both carry a great many things from place to place. And
This
some
is
of
very
those
true.
times it's vehicular.
Yeah, neither of us are necessarily light packers.
No, and Larry, one of his was, Lisa doesn't let any grass grow under her feet.
Okay.
And you
All
don't
right.
either.
No,
You
that's
don't
true.
either.
That's true. And it's true that the feet might also be a little weighed down with other things we're carrying around. So, okay. Yeah, that's true.
Well, where are we going first in our metaphorical car to celebrate Arizona?
Yes, indeed. Okay, so today we are going actually well west of the state, across the desert, across the state line, right up to the edge of the continent where the Scripps Pier in San Diego, California reaches out into the ocean, because north of that are tide pools. And the reason that this was important is because as a kid, like all God and summer fearing Arizonans, we went to a California beach as often as we could in the summer. This was a place that my family and I went. In some cases, 3 generations of us were there. And I have these wonderful memories of being on this particular beach in this particular place with my mother's mother. So my Gram's mom, and then my sister and me. And it was north of the Scripps Pier that were the tide pools. And I was thinking of that because I visited the coast recently and just marveled again at the sense of this completely otherworldliness about it. And I think that impression started because when I was a kid, we would sort of roll out in the morning and there would be a marine layer. So it was this
Remember
fog.
that?
Yeah, the fog between, shore and sky. And so everything feels misty. And I think when things feel misty, they automatically feel a little mysterious. And we would have to cross. We would cross the point in the beach as we walked toward the pier where what we called the frogmen would walk out into the water. And it was only later that I learned that these were scuba divers, properly identified, but they were the frogmen who would walk out into the water. I wasn't a kid to swim in the ocean. I splashed and I waded and I would sort of fall down in the waves, but I wasn't necessarily, an ocean swimmer. And so watching these like black clad bodies sort of get swallowed up by water and then swim underneath it was, the word just keeps coming, otherworldly. And so that was the introduction to the walk. And we would walk on and then walk past the pier. And I think piers, like bridges, can feel like both barriers and connectors and come with sort of a sense of arrival, that if you cross under them or you go to the ends of them or whatever it is, it can feel like a milepost crossed, a significant milepost
A
passed.
demarcation point.
Yes. And so, past the pier, and then we would go to what we called crab country, where it was these rocks that had fallen. Enormous rock had fallen from the coastline, from the cliff face, and
So there was bluff behind you
mm-hmm,
overhead. Okay.
yep, and
Okay.
it was tall cliff face, bluff, and then rocks that had fallen from it. At high tide, the ocean would come in and flood them, and you couldn't necessarily get to them, but at low tide you could walk out and there were tide pools, and we learned to spot crabs and minnows and anemones and spiny sea urchins. It just was like pulling the covers back or the curtain back on another world.
How nice.
Yeah, yeah.
We
Um,
don't have a tide pool equivalent in Arizona because we have no tides, do we?
We don't. One of the best book titles I ever saw was Barbara Kingsolver's High Tide in Tucson. Um,
And until I
and
read it, I thought, how can this be?
yes,
We won't
and
give it away for
yeah,
people who haven't
yeah.
read it, but
And there's both charming and interesting, supposition that has to do with the sense of high tide. But no, we have snowmelt season that
oh
tends
yeah.
to, feed the rivers with sometimes record flooding. and and then of course we have drought, which everyone knows well, but those aren't the same as tides
No,
necessarily.
no.
And they sure don't, even though tides don't come at the same time each day, there is a sense of regularity of things coming in and things coming out, that sort of a catch and release nature to life happening all the time along a shoreline.
Catch and release nature. That's nice. Yeah, when we're in Oceanside for the family, which have been three and not ever four generations for us also.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I have been told, I don't know if this number is current, that 20% of Arizona makes that pilgrimage to
It do
California.
they?
Yeah, that
Interesting.
maybe that's
Yes.
changed, but I certainly believe it based on my world,
Yes.
people I know.
Yes. And to hear Californians talk about their level of frustration with Arizonans in the
And
month of July.
zonies is what I've heard,
Yes,
the
exactly.
kind of slightly
Zonies.
disparaging term,
Yes.
but I'm happy to be one.
Yes. And happy to be able to go over when we can. It is a place of wonders.
Speaking of break, shall we?
Certainly we can. And then we can, turn around and head presumably back within the state lines to wherever it is you're taking us.
You got it in one. The good people at Visit Flagstaff remind us that we celebrate Route 66 turning 100 next year. It's never too early to start getting our kicks, as the Route 66 song says. Flag has so much on Route 66. There's the McMillan downtown, where my dad and son and I had a great meal. Also, the Dog House, on the corner where the girl, my lord, in a flatbed Ford actually slowed down to take a look at Jackson Browne before he wrote Take It Easy. Go visit Flagstaff. Okay, so we will skip that drive because it's not ever one of my favorites.
No, it's true.
But yeah, we're returning to the valley. And today is a person day more than a place day.
Okay.
Although I saw and met Carolyn Warner many, many, many places in the valley and a couple times in Flag and here and there. And I'm not exactly sure what decided that she was going to be the topic today, but she was an amazing person. She was our Arizona's superintendent of public instruction,
Mhm.
1975 to 1987. But actually, the things that I want to talk about don't really have a lot to do with that. I got to be her biographer. And the book, Before I Forget, Carolyn Warner, is a true
Mm.
treasure. It's a fun, fun book. And I say that as a reader as much as an author. And she wrote a book that I actually got to kind of incorporate into my book. And hers is
Mm.
called The Last Word, A Treasury of Women's Quotations.
Oh,
And
wow.
it is also wonderful. So each of the chapters in Before I Forget opens with a quote that I culled from her collection, The Last Word.
Nice.
And so three quick ones, just because I love, and shopping for those was just the berries. I loved looking for quotes for each of the chapters in her book. The first one starts with a quote because we're talking about Carolyn and her famous holiday party. Carolyn Norton, with her whole heart's welcome in her smile.
Oh,
Isn't that gorgeous?
wow.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then Dorothy Bernard, who I don't know other than this quote, courage is fear that has said its prayers.
Oh, love that.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
And then in another chapter, I think it was about her husband, life is change. Growth is optional. Choose wisely. Karen
Mm.
Kaiser Clark. And every once in a while, I think life
Mm.
is change. Growth is optional.
Seriously, yeah.
But two Carolyn Warner stories that I absolutely adore. One, the first time I ever saw her speak, her father was a speaker on the Chautauqua circuit. And I don't know if you're familiar with Chautauqua. I read about it when I was a little kid in a book called Those Miller Girls. And it was basically TED Talks before there were. And Chautauqua was a
Mm.
place, I think, upstate New York. And William Jennings Bryan and really good orators would speak there.
Mm.
And Carolyn inherited her father's incredible delivery. So, first time I saw her talk was when she was giving a eulogy for Ben Brown, the husband of Clara Lovett, who was an NAU president
Mhm.
and part of the sewing circle, senior executive women that Carolyn was part of. So, we're at a little church downtown and it has the little staircase that goes up for the speaker to deliver from, and Carolyn goes up and she looks out, and I can't do impressions, but she had a deep, resonant voice. And
Mm.
she looks at us for a beat, and then she says, the last time I saw Ben Brown, he was standing on a street corner in Washington, D.C., in his trench coat and Burberry scarf, in the fog, waiting for Clara. And I thought,
No,
wow,
yeah.
wow, I am in the presence of something I have not seen before.
Yeah, this is yeah, this is a dress made mystery thriller.
She was an orator, an
I
absolute orator.
guess.
Yeah, yeah. And the other story actually is after she died, her daughter Karen, she and her husband Ron had 6 kids.
Mm.
Stephen, because Ron had always wanted a Stephen, and then Kathy, Karen, Connie, Christopher, Christy. And Karen had the closest to Carolyn's delivery. Do you remember when everyone in Hawaii got a note due to some tragic accident? There was a nuclear warhead headed toward their way. And for
No.
about I think it was 2009 that happened, but
Oh
for
my
about 20
gosh.
minutes, Hawaii thought something was incoming. And Karen tells the story of being there with her mother, Carolyn, when that comes in. And Carolyn, as most of us would, kind of panics and runs upstairs and runs downstairs and doesn't see Carolyn. And then she really panics and looks out and sees the back of Carolyn standing on the beach outside their condo. And she races out and says, Mother, you know what's happening? And Carolyn says, Of course I do. How many people ever get to witness that? Get a glass of wine and join me. And she does indeed have a glass of wine. And Karen does. And at some point, as they're standing there, the word comes through, of course, that this is not happening. But I have never in my life wanted so much to be like anybody as I did want to be
Mm.
like Carolyn Warner when I heard that. I
Mhm.
thought of all the responses to all the things.
Yes,
That's the one I
absolutely.
want. I just hit the desk. Sorry
Yeah.
about that. That's the one I want the most.
Yeah. I mean, moxie comes to
That's a
mind.
great word. That's a
Yeah.
great word.
I mean, it's a lot more than equilibrium. Equilibrium goes pretty beige, compared to like the color of character that she was.
I love that.
Yeah,
Equilibrium goes
wow.
pretty beige. Oh, that's great.
Well,
Yeah. Yeah.
and wouldn't
Nice.
you? I don't know. I mean, would it occur to you to do anything other than what she told you to do in that moment?
I, boy, not me.
No, it'd be like,
No.
yes,
Yeah.
ma'am. Be right back. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness.
So,
Fabulous.
ah, equilibrium is
Wow.
pretty beige. Wonderful.
uh, wow. Love that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, now
Okay.
I'm double glad I brought it up because you gave me that great line.
Oh,
Um,
well, thank
and
you.
before we break again, I don't have a Carol and Warner coffee mug, but I do have. We both love Peregrine Books and Prescott.
Yes,
I
we
picked this up there,
do.
and you, not the public yet, but when the public wants to go to the website, celebratingaz.com, and see the coffee mug of the day, Orion is right there. This is one of those little
Oh,
fancy dancy mugs that when you put hot liquid, it lights up, but
oh,
I
you
like it
love
better
that.
unlit
Yeah.
because I like Orion in this form, not with his little fictional face and everything. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that was a find at Peregrine.
So, just on the topic of stars, real quick, because we have the Hawaii story. This is kind of fun. I learned from my auntie who has made an informal study of most things Hawaiian that um, Scorpio, the
Constellation
constellation Scorpio, is known as the fish hook
in Hawaii.
to that culture. Yeah,
Oh, the
yeah,
fish hook. I
the fish
That would
hook.
be interesting to know what indigenous names are for many constellations,
Sure. Yes.
but we know one.
Yes, but that's one, and I have
Avian.
to say that I'm very glad to borrow it because I would much rather there be a fish hook over my head than a scorpion.
All in favor.
Yes, right? Yeah,
I
yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, the you keep fishing, that's just fine. Yes.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Well, thank you. I love mugs with the stars on. That's lovely.
good. Thank you. Well, let's break and then come back for a question.
Super.
We have a second new sponsor, the Coogan and Martin Law Firm in Tubac. One more reason to love Tubac. It's such a charming little city, and it has a law firm that truly meets every need an attorney can provide. Real estate transactions, wills and probate, agricultural law, international transactions. They have worked together for decades. They are salt of the earth, brilliant people, and I cannot recommend Coogan and Martin more highly.
And we're back.
Hello.
Hello.
And I think you have today's question.
Yes. So the question is, as posed by Mr. Garth Brooks in the song Unanswered Prayers, um, w- some of God's greatest gifts are unanswered prayers. So goes the lyric. And so the question is, yes or no? Discuss.
And before we do, very quickly, our 2006 family pilgrimage to Oceanside, for which Tom and I shot a video that I still have, back in California, has Lindsay saying to daughter Sedona, who was much younger, "There's a Garth Brooks song, da 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 da. I wonder when you're going to experience that." And I had never heard the Garth
Mm.
Brooks song or about it until back on the beach.
Okay. Yes.
Yes, but would you share your answer first?
Sure. So, thinking about this, and first I have to share that I was talking to my mother about some similar, some similarly worded question. And she shared that growing up and attending Tuesday school, which was a staple of Lutheran community and education,
Never heard of Tuesday
yes,
school.
that they studied Lutheran catechism, which said God has three answers: yes, no, and not now, which I love to think about and
Interesting.
offer just in case it prompts new or different thoughts for others. For me, one of the times that I can think about unanswered prayers being an exceptional blessing, or rather prayers that were simply no, that came answered as no, was when I thought I had moved to Tucson for a job. I had interviewed, it was down to the last two candidates, and final interview, and it was, we'll send a letter next week, and it didn't come. And so I was then looking for another job, had some connection with the department. This was at U of A and the department and the hiring, and the hiring manager. and some shared background. And again, felt like, this is a sure and was told, we're adding this position, it just needs to crank through sort of all of the processes, we'll be in touch, we'll be in touch very soon. Doesn't come. And
Okay.
I try again, and I will share this story just because not out of any disrespect to any institution, but because you will see that I had the sense that things were truly bizarre. I applied with Merrill Lynch, and twice my resume got lost. And I thought, okay, this is I mean, this isn't just,
Talk about
not
no.
yeah,
That's
this
no,
isn't this
no,
is like
no.
in neon and repeated and flashing.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so really with nothing else to do, I sat down at my computer and started writing. And I just I and kept writing. In so doing, I finished a manuscript that later became Barbed, my first book, and
I
started
know it
writing.
well.
Yep. Yes, you
But
do.
yes,
And
in
you were
case
the first.
others do
Yeah.
not, Barbed
Yes.
is Julie's first book. Barbed, the
Yeah.
memoir.
And Lisa was its first advocate. I will never forget you saying, "Please, please, please write this book." Um,
I remember that.
yeah, yeah. I went to the U of A Poetry Center and I started taking classes, and I was just writing and writing and writing and writing because that's what I could do
Uh-huh.
without these jobs coming through. And then, I took a look at my bank balance and I had some savings and thought, well, I could just do this and see where it goes for a couple years anyway. I could do this. And and so I did. And so because Tucson wouldn't give me a job,
You
it
made your
made it
own.
made me a writer.
Oh.
Tucson made me a writer. And I
Boy,
will,
that's a
yeah,
great unanswered prayer.
isn't it? Yeah.
And in so answering, I thought, okay, this is the one. I think there are 5 different great unanswered prayers, but I'm going to follow your lead for the job that went away. And oddly, I was in Tucson and had gotten a job, applied for and gotten, I thought. The Mesa Tribune was going to open a Chandler Tribune.
Mm.
And I was brought up, and they showed me the San Marcos that was going to be renovated at that time, and everything was beer and Skittles. And so I gave notice to both the Green Valley News and my apartment, Oracle Gardens, 4045 North Oracle. All right, 30 days, I'm out. And Green Valley News and Oracle Gardens said, okay. And crickets. Nothing,
Oh,
nothing, nothing, nothing. And I called and I was ghosted before ghosted had been invented. And
it
I
is
was
amazing how loudly
crushed
nothing can speak.
and I
Yeah.
was sick. And fortunately, both Oracle Gardens and the Green Valley News were willing to let me stay. But it was humiliating and devastating.
Oh,
And I thought, this can't be happening. This can't be real. So, to make this very quick, I was doing Pima County victim witness work at the time every other Saturday night, and I'd given notice there too. And my Crisis One victim witness partner, Jerry Harwood, called and said, look, they haven't gotten me anybody. Can you do it? And my thought was, no, because it was hot. And when you do it, it's 6 p.m. to 3 a.m. I think. It's a
oh,
long shift.
wow.
And
Yeah.
nothing in me wanted to, but I
Yeah.
thought, you step up. So I did. And we had a guest, which first was also no, because then you kind of have to be on your best behavior when there's
Right.
an observer. But
Yeah.
it was a lovely woman, Carol Ann Bassett, who was a stringer for the New York Times, who wrote a story in the New York Times about victim witness
Oh
with
my
a
goodness.
photo of me and the back of the heads of 2 children we were transporting because you can't show minors.
Sure.
And the children had lice, and we had to go get the
Oh,
quell at Pima
wow. Yeah.
Hospital, Keno Hospital at 3 in the morning and didn't get home till dawn. And it was a debacle, a true debacle, but a debacle that the New York Times wrote about, Caroline
Oh
Bassett
my
wrote about.
gosh.
So I go to lunch in Green Valley and I come back and there's a pink call slip, Good Morning America, 212 blah, 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 Eileen. And I think, okay, somebody's messing with me. One of my friends is having a little fun at my expense. And I call it. And they weren't. It was Eileen at Good Morning America who said, "We want you to come and be on the show and talk about victim witness."
Oh my
And I said,
gosh.
"Oh, but I'm just a volunteer." And she said, "No, no, no, that's what we want. We want the volunteer story. We want the street." And I said, "Well, at least can I bring the Pima County attorney whose program it is?" And she said, "Yes, you can bring him."
Oh,
And I
okay.
thought, oh, I
Here
don't
we
think
go.
Steve Neely is going to think, "Yeah, you can bring me."
Yeah,
But
right.
Steve Neely and I went. We were flown in. We stayed at the
Oh
San
my
Moritz looking at
gosh.
the park. We had David Hartman at the time's driver, although that he did not interview us. It was Kathy Gifford's husband, Frank Gifford. Yeah, a former sports guy who did the interview.
Oh my
In the makeup
gosh.
room, AJ Simpson asked me out. I didn't know who it was. I said no. I brought back, or had my dad record a 1-inch version of this appearance, which I then walked into Kagan's news director's office with and sat down on his desk and said, "I just did 6 minutes of live national television. Tell me I can't be on your station." And Doug
Wow.
Crombie said, "You know what? You can. I'm going to give you a job. Besides, I just gave my 2 weeks notice and now you're somebody else's problem."
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
And the rest, as I would say, is history, because that led to every other good thing that ever happened. And I'm sure I was somebody else's problem. Nowadays, you can't just work in Green Valley in print and get on television. And there were good reasons for that. I'm sure it was a very slow slog for the people around me, but it worked. So,
Wow.
big fat unanswered prayer.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Wow. Yes.
Yes, do
And
you?
you read first,
I do.
don't you? Because
Yes,
I
I do.
shared first.
Correct.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
So this is actually not quite in Carolyn Warner's book, Before I Forget, but it's outtakes, and it's one of my
Oh,
all-time favorite stories, and so I'm gonna share it. One of Carolyn's best friends was Irma Bombeck, the beloved
nice.
humorist. Carolyn recalled that Irma and her husband Bill were equally passionate in their admiration of Paul Newman.
Mm.
Once, Irma stopped at the Baskin Robbins 31 Flavors on Indian School for ice cream. As she turned to go, Paul Newman walked in. Irma was so shocked she left, then sat in the car weighing what to say. She had to go back in, but which immortal film line mattered the most? They knew them all. What was most important? For a woman who used words for a living, she was quite without any. Still not knowing what she would say, but knowing she would forever regret not saying something, she walked into the store. Paul Newman was coming back out. She stopped in front of him, stone silent. He smiled and spoke. "If you're wondering where your ice cream cone is, you put it in your purse." She
Oh
thanked
my
him and watched him
gosh.
leave.
Oh my gosh. Arguably a better line than ever happened in a movie. Wow.
I, fun.
Yeah, so and this will be nowhere near as memorable as Paul Newman locating the ice cream cone.
Well, few things are, to be fair.
This is true. So,
So,
if you need to go looking through your purse now, like this is a
no,
good time.
no,
So, here we go.
no.
So thinking about the tide pools, I wrote about low tide and I called it A Prayer for Low Tide. Everyone loves a high, the build, surge, crash, the carry, buoyancy of a place and a pulse above the roiling churn. We'll paddle through toss and pound, breakers, then wait, watching the horizon for a rise, rush to ride until, spent, we beach, exhausted, nothing left to race the margins of forward, float, and fall. In recessions, when only negatives compound, each crest is a little lower than the last, drawing closer to the ache of exposure, a state of silt and pebble, things too small to carry more than shadows. And yet, there are treasures in pooling stillness, tiny, tentacled, tentative touches of the sweet and wobbly who cling to the undersides in big surf, smiling up from the shallows as darling children, hoping it's their turn to be picked up, held.
Wow.
And there we are.
What beautiful images.
Oh, thanks.
Aw.
Thanks.
Aw.
They were beautiful. They're beautiful places and creatures and creations that we got to explore.
Oh,
Yeah.
darling children. That's gonna lodge on an outcrop in my memory and
Yeah.
stay. How lovely.
Well, thanks.
How very
I'm
lovely.
glad. I'm glad.
Which will now join the other readings on our website,
On the website, yes.
celebratingaz.com.
But for now, yes.
All right.
Thank you as ever.
Looking forward to next time.
Always. Bye for now.
We'd really like to hear from you about anything this show led you to think about. Write to us at celebratingaz.com. The wizard behind making a conversation into a podcast is Tom Heidinger. The music comes from Daniel Blatney, and I'm Dana Cooper.